collect memorabilia for the northern New Jersey Hungarians and show their culture and their art. And we do many different programs. So every year we have about 6 or 7 programs which we present. And we have a collection, which collection is growing in a sense. And what you can see in this other room is all our collection already, but we have many other things which we have collected, books and memorabilia and costumes and pictures and images, what have you. And we think that it's a good thing for the Hungarians, because for the Hungarian culture in America, because otherwise many of these items would be lost forever. You know, we have heard many dreadful stories that people have passed away and the children didn't know what to do with their stuff, or the grandchildren, and they threw them out or ended up in the garbage, and it's a terrible tragedy. So we try to do something about it. And but we are a volunteer organization. We everybody who is associated with the museum, we do it because we love to do it, and we believe that it is an important thing. Udita, can you go to me? Because I will be speaking for a few more minutes. For example, this year we had a very interesting gypsy music program, and then we have this wonderful exhibition here, and then the next program, which will have a Bánkban, a Hungarian opera. We're going to be projecting a very good film about one of the Hungarian national operas called Bánkban. Following that, there will be a very exciting folk music group will be traveling through, and they will present for us here. There's some information is available there, and this will be in June. And if you put your name on our mailing list, then we'll send you email notices about it. And we try to be active, but you know, essentially everything is, as I said, is volunteer for us. Today's program is very special in a sense for us, because I think it's a learning experience for everybody. We have for the people who attend, as well as the person, and you will see why, because she's coming from so many different worlds that it is very, very interesting for me. Not only is she has a very strong Hungarian identity, but she has other dimensions, and it is quite exciting. Turkish people wanted to go to Western Europe. They came through Hungary. Then the Soviets wanted to come this way. So I mean, not the Soviets, the Russians. And they came to Hungary and they stayed. Many of these people, like the Turkish people, ruled Hungary for 150 years, and they haven't left, and that whole Hungary sort of stopped them from advancing to Western Europe. And then First World War. And when that happened, many of the people, the European, Western Europeans, were upset of the Hungarians, so they decided to take away many of the areas of Hungary which were originally part of the country. This occurred because they were able to prove that in fact there are not Hungarians living there, but other people live there, like Romanians who were settled into the country through the centuries. And so what happened is that they dissected Hungary, as you can see it on this map. And this is the first time they dissected it. In 1920, this was the situation. You know, this is how many kilometers, square kilometers, 5 million people went to this area. This is Romania, this is Slovakia. No. Oh, sorry, this is Slovakia, sorry. Thank you. This is Serbia. Important because we need to understand Udita's history. She was from this area, from Ungvar. Before the Second World War, some of the land was given back to Hungary. I believe that your parents, or your going back, they were Hungarians, Slovaks, the Hungarians again, and they became Ukrainians. And they never even moved. They stayed in the same apartment, you know. So this is interesting, and this is how exciting it is. So I think any questions so far? I hope I didn't confuse you too much, but what I would like to do is talk to Udita and understand her better a little bit, and see how she grew up, and where she studied, and how she ended up in America, and how she is among us at this particular moment. She's a very talented person, and I would like to ask you, Udita, let's start it with some music. How about that? We haven't really practiced a little list. You know, so this is we also commemorate this anniversary.
is the nocturne. Hungarian patriotic tunes, and also tunes which I heard from my father, who loved the Hungarian music. Actually, that was his language of expression, I think. This song, which I'm going to play, reflects, let's say, the history of Hungary, and it is called Beyond, like over yonder where the four rivers are. There's the four rivers which flow across the country. was a patriotic song of Hungarian soldiers. And now I'm going to play a hymn which is a very important piece for every Hungarian to remember. And it's called the Székely hymnus. It's about the territories which Hungary lost. It's the Romanian territories. And the reason I feel so attached to this music and to the beauty of these melodies because my grandmother comes from the territories from Romania.
I would like to just establish the fact at this moment that that she does speak very, very good Hungarian and other languages. So if you don't speak Hungarian, forgive us for a second. I like to just speak a few words to Udita in Hungarian, jó? Tehát Isten hozta Uditkát, nagyon szép volt ez az apácos út, és hozzalott ezeket a szavakat. Hallásból?
Igen.
Szeretett énekelni?
Szerettem mindig, amikor zongorázni, kezdtem zongorázni, elénekelni, és aztán már lehetőség volt, elmentem Budapestre, megvettem a CD-t, és a zenét hallásból.
Nagyon ügyes. Szépen hozzáadta a kísérletet.
Köszönöm szépen.
I asked her how she learned these beautiful Hungarian songs, and she said her father sat next to her, and then he sang it, and then she learned it from hearing, not from the scores. You know, she's a very good improvisationer. You also speak Russian.
Yes.
I assume. I mean, Israel, why don't you ask a question? Ask her how.
That will be a statement.
Okay.
Нам очень нравится, как ты играешь на пианино. We like it very much how you play piano.
Yes.
And of course how you paint. И так же, как ты рисуешь.
Спасибо.
Yes, спасибо. That we understood too. Okay, very good. And what other languages do you speak, Udita?
In Russia, as a second language, I learned Ukrainian.
Ukrainian too, yeah?
Ukrainian, it was...
Anybody speaks Ukrainian here? No? Except her?
And when I came to America, my third language was English. And shortly after coming to the United States, I went to Israel and I learned a little bit of Hebrew. Reading and writing as well. And I also had an opportunity to go to France, and I learned a little bit of French.
That's wonderful.
So,
that's wonderful. We're not going to try each of them because we would not understand any one of those. But that's good. So, and let's go back to the beginning then actually, you know. I think we're going back to Ungvar, or the area of Ungvar, and this is now Ukrainians. And Hungarians live there, Hungarian Jewish people live there, I guess. Can you tell me a little bit about the atmosphere over there? Was there a community of Hungarians? Was there a community of Hungarian Jews who were living there? Was there a community which was somewhat frightened from the Ukrainians, or maybe even the Ukrainians were frightened from the Soviet, from the Russian? What kind of, when you were a child, what was your first remembrance of ethnic identity situations in that village?
in the circle of my family and my parents' friends, it was Hungarian and Hungarian Jewish people. I would say it was more within there it was a very Hungarian feeling. When I went to a Russian school in Ungvar, in Uzhgorod, we had Russian schools, Ukrainian schools, and there was a Hungarian school as well. I went to a Russian school, but it was Hungarian and Hungarian Jewish feeling. But for instance, when I studied music, my music teacher I spoke Hungarian with her. She was Hungarian speaking. And with my first art teacher, I spoke both Hungarian and Russian, but he spoke Ukrainian with his pupils. But there were 3 languages we communicated.
And people lived out in this community, people lived next to each other, all kinds of different languages, or you had like an enclave where people would live, like Hungarians would live in?
No.
It was all mixed up.
It was mixed up, and the feeling of the whole town was like, for instance, if somebody would go shopping, we would use Russian or Ukrainian. It depends where we would go.
But older people like your parents or your grandparents at the age, they had a difficult time learning Ukrainian or Russian, or what was the... I imagine that all of a sudden you are in a different country, even you haven't moved. Now they forced the people to speak different language, or they allowed...
Well, people had to learn the language. My father, he spoke broken Russian, and at work he had to speak Russian.
And he learned it in a couple of years, or
whatever. He had to learn it. Some people learned it more advanced, but it was difficult.
Because it's not only the speaking, but also the writing is something that is a challenge. Anyway, so this is already you grew up in a... That's okay, we love children, so especially your grandchildren. So you grew up in a very ethnic mixed area. So you said, what did you study first, drawing or music, and what was the reason for you starting music? What did your parents decided that you should get a good education, let's say, or?
The music, I remember in our house there was an old piano. There was an old piano, and from what I understand, it remained from the previous, from the people who used to live in this house. It was a very old house, a big house. And then my parents decided to get me a new piano. And I liked to play the piano.
Even though you didn't learn anything, just...
At first I played by myself, and I was very little when I started picking up some music and maybe putting together some melodies by myself. And there was a friend who attended a music school in Hungarian, and she even wrote down some of my melodies when I was little. I loved the piano.
So you were a composer before you knew how to what you were doing, yeah?
No. But drawing also. I like to draw, and I like to spend time. Drawing, I started with other children in the kindergarten, and my first show was at the kindergarten.
But it was really the music where you get accomplished first, is it not? Or the two things went side by side?
Well, the accomplishments were actually noticed by the teacher and there was a school in Hungarian where I used to go as a child, and my children's drawings were selected for shows, not only in the Soviet Union but also abroad. So before I was 10, my drawings and paintings were already in several foreign countries. But simultaneously I learned how to play the piano.
Was it an art school that you went to, or just a regular sort of school?
At the age of 10, my parents and I received an invitation to go to Moscow, where I should have appeared in front of foreign correspondents and be present at a press conference where I was asked questions about my artworks and my schooling, and I was 10 at that time. And we went to Moscow in November of 1965.
This is where these articles are from, right?
Yes.
And that's an these are Hungarian newspaper articles of the event when she was in Moscow with her parents.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, that the Hungarian newspaper in Moscow picked it up, and it was published in Hungary that the Hungarian speaking person is a young lady is being shown her artwork. Looks like there was a lot of artwork shown at that time. This was like a solo exhibition, or this was just a...
This was my first, this article represents my first show in Moscow. It says the little artist is giving a press conference, and I had to appear in front of like big audience of foreign correspondents and answer questions. And my parents were sitting on my sides, and I had to answer questions too. There were correspondents from several countries, and amongst them from Hungary. But over the years, as in the audience was the director of one of the finest art schools in Moscow, and in the Soviet Union, in Moscow, and also and he said that he's accepting me into the art school without entrance exams.
But you were only 10 years old then?
I was only 10, and the next year I was accepted to the Fine Arts School in Moscow on full scholarship. And I entered the school. It was like...
But then you had to move to Moscow?
Yes.
The whole family moved to Moscow?
No. What happened is that I went to Moscow and I lived in the dormitory in the school. Within the school there was a dormitory for the children who came from other republics of the Soviet Union. And I was by myself, but then my parents decided to move to Moscow. But they were denied the permit to stay, to live there. It was very difficult to get a permit to live in Moscow. So my mother came to Moscow and she stayed with me. And then shortly, like it was in 1966, and in 2 years, my parents decided to apply for an exit visa.
To the United States?
To the United States.
In 66?
It was already in 68.
68.
62.
Because at that time you had some relatives over here already, right?
Yes, to join my mother's relatives, brothers and sisters, and that was the reason to ask for immigration.
So it took about how many years for that exit visa to
It took more than 7 years.
Wow. All that time you were still in Moscow studying?
Yes, I was going on with my studies and with my parents' support, and my mother would stay with me, next to me also from time to time, and my father would come, and of course I would go home for vacation.
Yeah.
And during one of my vacation times, I was 17, I made the drawings of this older person. If you see in the show, I call him
right?
Uncle Sándor. Yes, he was not my relative, but in Hungarian when we say uncle, it's like uncle. Bácsi, yes. But this person, because I decided to draw him, he used to go from house to house in Hungary to cut wood. And my father asked him if he could pose for me. And I'll tell you a secret. There was a bottle of champagne in our house, and my father offered the champagne to Uncle Sándor.
Right.
He accepted it. And he posed for me for 3 pieces.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a gorgeous drawing. So that's early. So what year is that about?
It was in 1972, and this painting was also shown in the article, which shows my graduation year in 1973 when I finished the school.
So you did study in Hungary. Did you study after that or?
After.
So what happened after you graduated?
Yes, I graduated in 1973, and my parents decided that I should go to Hungary to visit my relatives also, and to try to, maybe I could study there. But it was quite difficult. I had to ask for permission from the teachers at school still. And when I arrived to Budapest, I applied as a guest student to the Fine Arts Academy in Budapest, and I was accepted. But there was a condition imposed both by the Hungarian government and the Soviet government that I should have, if I decide to study longer in Hungary than, let's say, 3 months, then I have to ask permission from the Ministry of Culture. Yes. But I stayed in Hungary more, like roughly about, I would say, 6 months. But I had to leave the country immediately after 6 months. I had to go back to the Soviet Union. And it was already the time when we received the exit visa to come to America. So if we didn't come to America, then I would have probably gone on and applied for.
In Hungary, there's a couple of pictures here which you made, like the one of from the Gellért Mountain, I guess.
Yes. This particular painting, actually, I painted in 2001 when I went back to Hungary from the United States. But the drawings which are at the entrance of the museum, I drew in 1973 when I would walk around Budapest with my sketchbook, and I would do sketches.
So can you tell us a little bit about? I know that when I'm in Hungary, and I spend some time there, nowadays, I feel a little bit strange because I've been living in America for 50 years, and going back to Hungary, you really feel a little bit strange, even though you are in Hungary, you're not quite really at home. And I was wondering if you had, what kind of an experience did you have finally after all these years going to Hungary, and everybody around you speaks Hungarian, what kind of a feeling did you have, if you can recall that kind of a feeling?
When I found myself in Hungary in 1973 in August, I had a very good feeling. I had a good feeling. I saw a country which, first of all, I saw something like I felt very comfortable in Budapest. I liked being there.
You were alone in Budapest?
I was not alone.
I mean, your parents were not with you?
My parents were not with me, but I lived by my uncle.
Oh, you had an uncle there?
I have relatives there, and if you see a drawing from Debrecen, when I went to Debrecen, I did sketching there, but I also visited my other uncle, my father's brothers. There were two brothers whom my father had and who were living in Hungary, in Budapest and in Debrecen, but there were other relatives also. But what was interesting for me in Hungary is that it was the first time I was introduced to modern art. It was the first time I saw an international biennale of modern art. And it was a new experience for me.
Come this way forward, because I think the light is disturbing. But tell me about that. That is interesting, because you certainly have some modern feeling in some of your works, but it's not modern as such. I think you're fairly traditional, and a lot of beautiful emotions and colors come out. But what was your feeling about modern art? I assume it was very ultra-modern.
It was, yes, when I painted the Biennale in Budapest, it was, I saw ultra-modern paintings, drawings and sculptures, and I was exposed to a new language of expression, which, although in Moscow at the Pushkin Museum, I saw the paintings by Matisse, and I was familiar with the paintings of Cézanne, but I've never seen a modern 20th century art as it is. I was familiar with the artworks by Picasso from books, which I saw. But in Budapest, I had the privilege to meet in person the great Hungarian artist Zóbel Béla.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
But he was not ultra-modern, he was a modern artist. But
he was not ultra-modern, but I was very, I had the privilege to meet him, to see him in Saint-André, where he lived, and I even made a drawing of him at that time. when his retrospective show was at the time when I was there in 1973.
Do you know a person named Kratofi? Yeah, okay, that's fine.
And when I was very impressed by Sobel-Béla's color schemes and and when I was painting at in Budapest Academy, I was impressed by his use of color, although I would not paint like he would paint so loosely. I wouldn't break up the form as he does in his paintings.
Interesting. Sobel is a quite well-known Hungarian artist, and he's got many. Did you, when you went to the museum there, did you people like Csontváry or something like that? Did that make any effect on you? A little bit of modern Hungarian.
Csontváry, from my perception, Csontváry is a little bit too expressive for me. I admire his works very much. I admire his scale of works. For instance, the big, huge painting which he has at the gallery at the yes, at the Fine Arts Gallery in Hungary. But for me, he's a little bit too dramatic. I would rather, I like the works of Színyei Mersepál. I would say ever since I was little, I was exposed to the works by Munkácsy Mihály.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it.
Munkácsy Mihály.
Right. There's a great exhibition now of his 3 pieces in Hungary. Yeah, but Munkácsy is very from the same area. He's from the same, also from the Ungvar region. Another village, another big city is called Munkács. That's where he is from. So maybe you have some sort of a connection to geography. But he's a very classical, late 19th century, early 20th century artist. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, that's interesting. So being in Budapest as opposed to Ungvar, Moscow had similar museums, right?
Yes.
But they were not so. The Budapest museums gave you a bigger effect maybe than the Moscow museum.
In Moscow, when I studied, I lived. The school where I was living is right across the street from the Russian National Gallery, the Tretyakov Gallery. And this is where my basic academic upbringing is coming from the Russian school of painting. And I also, there was the Pushkin Museum where the Western European art is exhibited. This is where I was first introduced to the Western European art by the artists such as Renoir. And also the Renaissance art is very well represented at the Pushkin Museum. From very early age, I was also traveled with my parents to St. Petersburg, to Leningrad. And even before I went to school in Moscow, I was exposed to the fine art at the Hermitage. But my understanding of art derives from the Russian school. Although when I was growing up in my parents' house, there was a Bible illustrated by Zichini.
Yeah.
So it was like, first I was introduced to the Hungarian art through at home, like Munkácsy Mihály, Zichini, and then I was introduced to the Russian art when I started to study in school, and then when I went to Hungary, I was getting more acquainted with the Hungarian art. Yes.
Okay, so then you went back to home, I guess, and then you immigrated to the United States.
Yes.
You immigrated to where in the United States? Where did you live first?
We arrived to New York. We lived in Brooklyn.
Okay, but by that time you were...
I was
Just barely 20, not quite 20. 19 years.
19
Okay.
years old.
So you lived in Brooklyn, and how was the adjustment to America for you? That must have been a big adjustment in a sense.
It was a big adjustment. Yes, it was a cultural adjustment as well. When I first came across with the American art, I admired mostly the realistic art. I could never associate myself, for instance, with the abstract expressionistic art at first. But then when I studied in the United States, I was learning more about the American modern art. Yet, I believe it's a very personal perception. So it's a transition which goes back.
So when you came to America, you wanted to become an art, continue in your art essentially, and what was your goal? What did you think that you will do at that time in America? What would be your profession as such?
I definitely wanted to go on painting.
Painting.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we left the music, which we started everything. The music from that point on became a sort of like a hobby to you, more or less. Then
it became a hobby and a necessity. Like I would say, an emotional necessity.
Right. You always played the piano. Always.
Playing the piano is maybe before beginning to paint. I like to play a little bit of exercise, play like maybe a little bit of Bach, a little bit of remembering some pieces which I used to learn when I was younger.
But you haven't continued to study the music as such.
I didn't continue.
It all became like a internal kind of a thing for you to, yeah. So then you decided to continue to paint, and you came to America. So what did you do? How did you try to achieve that?
I applied to study at the Pratt Institute of Commercial Art, Illustration.
Judy went to Pratt Institute.
Yes.
You may have gone together then.
Yes, but earlier. Yes, the Pratt. But I stopped studying at Pratt because then I had an opportunity to go to Israel, and I became also a guest student at the Fine Arts Academy in Jerusalem.
I'm sorry, I forgot to do that. I should have. Sorry.
And I stayed in Jerusalem for 9 months, and I studied there. In Israel.
In an art school?
Yes, I studied there at the academy, at the Fine Arts Academy in Jerusalem, and I was...
Go ahead.
And I was learning quite a bit about the art of Israel, because it is also very much connected with the Eastern European art. With the artists who had immigrated to Israel from Eastern Europe, and the academy itself was founded by the artists who had gone to Palestine before.
Yeah, mostly are they Russian or Hungarian or what? Were they probably Eastern European?
Different artists. They were different. So there were some Polish Jewish artists, Russian Jewish artists who were.
Did you have relatives there in Israel, or you had another? So you stayed also with relatives? So
I stayed with relatives, and then I lived in a school where I learned some Hebrew, and I went to camp.
Did that short stay of 9 months, what did that really impress you in any way, or did that give you some sort of a change in your thinking about art, being in Israel?
It was also like a transition and a new understanding for me about the state of the arts in various countries, let's say. And in Israel, there is a great development of the modern art. And when I was attending the school, I was continuing the traditional art. I was continuing my path of academic, I would say realistic traditional art. I remained.
Did you have any exhibitions in Israel? Have they shown your works anywhere during that time?
During this time, yes. One of my teachers, he had invited my classmates to a slideshow, and he was introducing me as a student of the Russian School of Art and how the techniques were used in the Russian school.
Okay. So then you came back from Israel and you continued.
Yes.
You studied in New York City at the art school, right? And
yes. I came back from Israel and I received a grant to go on studying in America, in New York. And I've attended one of the greatest art institutions in the United States, which is called the New York Studio School, which was founded in the 1950s in New York by a group of artists who were pioneering maybe the modern art and also so to speak, a new language in art. The students are introduced to to study, let's say, Cézanne's work, Matisse, and the constructive, more of a constructive way of approaching drawing and painting, and it's called the New York Studio School of Drawing and Painting.
So that was around that time when you met your husband, right? After that, yeah.
I met my husband after I went to the school, but also I attended also the Art Students League, which is a very well-known art institution in the United States, and when I was attending the Art Students League, I met my husband.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about that connection. How did that happen and how it came about? Because that's an important
it came about very in our building where I lived. We had a neighbor, very nice lady, and we used to go to concerts together. And once she asked me to come over to be a guest at her Eastern dinner, and I came to her dinner, and there was my husband.
There he is.
There he is. And then after that, we went to, there was also a concert at Queens College, and with this neighbor, we went to the concert, and then my husband called me, and he invited me to a concert.
Good, so that's how you got together.
So we went to
and you lived in New York at that time, right?
I lived in New York, and then I moved, after getting married, I moved to Forest Hills in Queens.
When did you come to New Jersey?
We came to New Jersey in 1995.
Just recently.
Recently, yes.
So while being married, you continued to do your art and playing music for entertainment of yourself, more or less, and for others?
I would say the music I've also played for entertainment of other people, and I'm very proud to present one of my listeners,
okay,
Mrs. Kuznetsova, and I had a great privilege to entertain Mrs. Kuznetsova and her friends as a musician, and also we were doing some art together as well.
I'm sure you didn't play Hungarian songs for them, did you?
No, I didn't play Hungarian, but I would gladly play a Russian piece.
Okay, let's hear that. If you talk about that's something different.
I'm going to play one of the Russian romances And it's a very lyrical piece, and it's written on the poetry of one of the greatest Russian poets, by Alexander Pushkin.
Okay, we like to hear that very
It's a
much.
Hungarian piece, and it's a Schlager. It's a Hungarian popular song, and he also likes to listen to it.
Okay.
And it's called "Where Is This Summer?" Polvanazon.
Oh. time flies so fast. A little about the pieces which you are exhibiting today, if we could ask you about that. So let's start from there. I mean, that certainly you mentioned this is the Budapest exhibition. I mean, when you went back to Budapest and you did that work, and that's your uncle, Sándor. And then there is this, and if you could just tell us why you selected these pieces and why are they important to you?
I would say that this is, these are paintings from different times of when I painted them. For instance, the panoramic view of Budapest is when I went back to Hungary in 1998 after a long period of time, and I was painting there, and I decided, I would like to make a painting, so I took my easel, my French easel, which is here, and I went to the gallery